I moved into the house 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. My ex-wife kept the kids. I kept whatever was left. The house was old, but it wasn't abandoned. It was clean, quiet, maintained. The kind of place that felt like someone still cared about it, even if no one lived there anymore. After everything ended, silence felt safer than memories. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The house didn't feel hostile. It felt attentive. Doors didn't slam. They closed softly, always behind me. Cold drafts moved through hallways that had no windows. Every time I crossed from one room into another, I felt watched, not threatened, just observed. I told myself it was stress, a new place, new routines, too much quiet. The first night I heard voices, I blamed the radio. It turned on by itself just after midnight. Static at first, low and uneven. I got up to turn it off, but as I walked closer, the sound changed. It wasn't random. Beneath the static were voices, overlapping, panicked. They weren't speaking clearly enough to understand, but I could hear fear in them. Urgency, confusion. I stood there longer than I should have. Then one voice cut through the others. A man's voice, calm, controlled, not afraid. The radio snapped off the moment I stepped closer. The next morning, I laughed it off. Old wiring, interference, sleep deprivation. I told my ex-wife about it anyway. The radio, the noises, the feeling that something in the house noticed me. She was quiet for a moment, then sighed. She said I needed sleep. She said I was alone for the first time in years, that my mind was filling in gaps, left by the kids being gone. I wanted to argue. Instead, I stopped bringing it up. That night, the radio turned on again. This time, I didn't move. I stayed exactly where I was and listened. The voices were clearer when I stayed still. Certain phrases repeated. Certain tones returned like echoes of the same moment playing over and over.
They're back. Not him.
The door.
Every time the voices grew louder, the man's voice interrupted.
Stop.
Static surged. The other voices faded. It felt intentional, like someone controlling the volume. I started sleeping with the radio on. Over the next few nights, patterns emerged. The radio only activated after midnight. It reacted to movement. When I paced, the static grew worse. When I stood still, the voices sharpened.
Not him.
The house began changing too. Doors locked themselves while I was inside rooms. Drawers I hadn't touched were suddenly closed. Whenever I searched certain areas, closets, storage spaces, the basement, the radio cut out completely. It felt like something didn't want me looking too closely. That's when I started researching the house. At first, it was simple. Property records, old listings, renovation permits, nothing unusual. Then I widened the search, archived newspapers, local crime reports, microfilm scans at the library. That's where I found it, an article from the late 1990s. A family murdered during a supposed home invasion. Parents, children. The intruder was never identified. No arrests, no suspects. The house address matched. I printed the article and brought it home. That night, the radio was louder than it had ever been. The voices overlapped so heavily I couldn't separate them. Except for one. The man. He didn't sound scared. He sounded irritated. Whenever I reread the article, the radio reacted. When I focused on the children, the static softened. When I thought about the mother, the voices grew desperate. But when I focused on the father, the radio fought back. Static surged violently. The man's voice rose. Stop! Clear as day. That was the moment it stopped feeling like a haunting. It felt like resistance. I started digging deeper. Insurance records showed new policies taken out less than 6 months before the murders. Financial documents hinted at debt, late payments, foreclosure warnings. None of that was mentioned in the article. I tried to find reports of forced entry, broken windows, signs of a struggle with an outsider. There were none. The official narrative didn't match the evidence. The radio began cutting out whenever I uncovered something new. Lights flickered. Doors closed harder now, not softer. The house wasn't observing anymore. It was reacting. That's when the realization crept in, slow and unwelcome. There was no intruder. The father had staged everything. The voices on the radio weren't haunting the house, they were trapped in
They're
it.
back.
The
Not
calm
him.
voice wasn't warning me, it wasn't protecting the family, it was suppressing them. Every closed door, every surge of static, every interruption. He wasn't trying to scare me away, he was trying to keep me from listening. I brought in a medium after that. I didn't tell her much, just the address. She stopped the moment she stepped inside. "They've been waiting," she said, "and one of them doesn't want to be found." We held the seance in the living room. The radio turned on before we touched it. The man's voice came through immediately, louder than ever, angrier. When the medium spoke the mother's name, the static cracked. When she acknowledged the children, the house seemed to exhale. The voices shifted, no longer panicked, no longer trapped. The man's voice tried to interrupt again, but it faltered. For the first time, it sounded unsure. When the truth was spoken out loud, the radio went silent, not snapped off, silent. The air felt lighter. The house felt empty. Later that night, I slept without the radio on. For the first time since I moved in, nothing watched me. The woman and the kids were finally free. The father was not. Sometimes late at night, I still feel him there. Not loud, not in control, just alone. And listening.
Some stories don't end here. Subscribe for more night logs.